everybody, welcome to yet another video. So today we're experimenting with a 1K clear coat. Now I know some people will sigh and some people will say I'm mad, and if you do leave a comment in the description of the video, I'll know that you haven't watched it, or certainly haven't watched the introduction. You've just read the title and thought that I'm mad, because I've had people before. I've done a video once before using cellulose, and I lacquered that with a 1K clear coat, and I got a little bit of abuse from people saying you must be mad doing that because it won't last, etc, etc. So I realise if you put that, you haven't actually listened to what I'm saying. So what I'm saying here is that one of the things I get asked a lot is, can I use a 1K clear coat instead of a 2K? And that's going to be because of safety reasons. People don't want to spray the 2K clear coat because you should use an air-fed mask, and it's just a lot more complicated safety-wise. So people want to use a 1K clear coat if they can, because they find it easier to use. Now obviously the drawbacks of a 1K clear coat, in my opinion, the biggest drawback is the lack of resistance to chemicals. So this being a fuel tank is probably the worst thing you could use a 1K clear coat on, because it isn't fully resistant to petrol. You will see this when we go on with the video a bit. I've done it in various stages, but what I've done is you see the painting process which we're going through now, or the clear coat process, sorry, which we're going through now, and I did a couple of different stages. I left it for 2 weeks because I know in the past when I've used this on I actually got a 5 litre can of this ages ago. It's a Upol clear coat. I think it's a 2085. Let me have a look at my notes. Yeah, it is a 2085. So it's a Upol 2085. A clear coat. You buy it in normally 1 litre tins or 5 litre tins, and it's designed for spray gun use. And I bought a 5 litre tin of it, and I bought it to use it for alarm boxes. I did some alarm boxes for a friend of mine, but he wanted it done at his place of work. This is about 6 years ago, I think. He wanted it done at his place of work, so I said to him, well, 1K clear coat should be absolutely fine for, you know, the use you want, and I can spray it in your premises without any worries. So that's what happened anyway. So that's why I've still got a tin of it, and it's about half used, I suppose. So occasionally I do visit it for something that it just needs a 1K clear. But what I was saying about the differences between a 1K and a 2K, the biggest difference you'll find is its resistance or lack of resistance to chemicals, and to a lesser extent to abrasions. So in the case of a bike tank, as I say, it's the worst case scenario because you can get spillages of fuel, and you also have abrasions from your jeans, your leathers, or whatever, on the side of the tank. But for a lot of other uses that don't come into contact with chemicals, and I find that it's more, I've done wheels before with a 1K clear coat, and I found that it's quite resistant to oil in general, but not petrol. As I say, as we will see. But let's go through the process of spraying it first. Now, what you'll notice about a 1K clear coat, and I presume that's the same for most 1K clear coats, this is the only one I've ever used, is it's quite a lot thinner than a 2K clear coat. So it actually, you normally use it straight from the tin. You certainly wouldn't really want any thinners with it because it's thin enough as it is. And one of the things I noticed using this gun, Meiji Spot, It's a 1.2 mini gun, but it's got quite a clout to it. It's a really good gun and not particularly expensive compared to some of them. I can't remember how much I paid for it now. I did a standalone review on it, which I'll try and remember to put a link in the description so that you can find that if you want to, because we're going more about the process in this video rather than the gun. But what I noticed with this gun, normally I would use this at about 1.5, 1.6 bar, but if you put the pressure up to 1.5, 1.6 bar with this particular material in there, the fan actually separates slightly. It gets top and bottom heavy, which is normally a case of over atomization. If you put a 2K clear in it, it wouldn't have that separation. So you have to bring, on this particular gun, you have to bring the pressure down. And one of the things people ask me when they're talking about spraying 1K clear coat is what pressure do you use it at? And obviously there's no set pressure for a particular material. In this case, you know, a Upol 2085. There's no particular pressure because it entirely depends on the gun and obviously the finish you want. So I used this at 1.4 bar, which was absolutely ideal. But if you're looking at this video, and I would suggest that most people looking at this video are probably people that want to spray at home, and as I say, don't want to use 2K clear coat, then use whatever pressure your gun gives the best pattern at, really. This isn't really a like how to spray video. It's more of a video of explaining about 1K clear coat and the differences you can expect. But I looked at a few videos quite a few years ago now on YouTube of people comparing 1K with 2K, and what they seem to often say, in fact all the time they say, is you can't get such a good gloss finish with a 1K clear coat as you can with a 2K clear coat. So one of the things we set out to do, or I set out to do in this video, is to prove them wrong, because it's perfectly possible to get a really good finish with a 1K clear coat, as you know, as we did here. I know I've blown my own trumpet a bit. When you see this finished, you'll see that it's actually a really good. In fact, it was unbelievably good for a 1K clear coat. And you'll also see a purple tank, which I did the following day in a 2K clear coat for something different, but it was with a 2K clear coat the following day. So they've both been done at or around the same time. So what I've done is I've done this video, as I was saying, in two stages. One will be 2 weeks later. So we've applied the original clear coat. I've waited 2 weeks to try and give it some sort of time to properly go off. I know it's not a chemical reaction with a 1K like it is with a 2K, but I've tried to give it a reasonable bit of time to go off. And then we try it against a 2K just for looks, to see whether it's retained the gloss as much as the 2K one has. And then we try some petrol on the tank to see what sort of a reaction we get. We're not there yet, but we will do a bit later, and you'll be able to see the actual effect that the fuel has on the tank. But trying to lay to rest that stigma that you won't, stigma is probably the wrong word, but you know that yeah, I don't know what word to use, but the fact that you can't get such a good finish with a 1K as a 2K really doesn't seem to be true in this case. It actually seems to me that the 1K is harder to spray, and that's because it is so thin, I think. It's very easy to get runs with it. So if you are new to spraying, just go for, I used actually 3 coats with this, whereas normally you would only use, with a normal 2K clear coat, you would normally only use 2, but because, as I say, the actual material is very thin, therefore the actual the layers you're putting on is quite thin. So I thought, well, I'll put 3 on just to give it a bit of a depth of gloss. It also allows you a bit of actually this was super clean, but it actually allows you to do a little bit of sanding and polishing if you need to. apart from the fact that I said I adjusted the spray gun differently to what I would normally do with a 2K clear coat, the application process is basically the same. You want plenty of heat in the tank if you can get it, and I also heated up the material. What am I looking at my notes here? I heated the clear up to about 28 degrees Celsius. The tank I put a bit of heat into as well. I've got a lamp, you can use a heat gun or just wait for the weather to get warmer. The actual temperature in the room was about 14 degrees Celsius when I did this video, and because this doesn't this effectively dries, a 1K clear coat will effectively dry, unlike a 2K. With a 2K it's a chemical reaction, so it does to an extent dry, so any solvent or whatever will evaporate from the surface of the clear coat, but the actual drying of it is a chemical reaction, and that's not the same with a 1K clear coat, and that is its biggest problem, because once you start to introduce some kind of solvent to it, so thinners or what we're going to use here, petrol, it starts to revert it back to its original state. So as I say, it's going to be a compromise, but there's a reason that a lot of people want to spray 1K rather than 2K, which we won't go into again, but you know, it comes up such a lot that I felt this video was something that was good to do. So you'll notice that I'm going, this is the final coat, you'll notice that I'm going very, very slow to put a good coat on there to give us a good gloss finish. And this is where a bit of experience would come in handy, because if you're, again, I'm saying that a lot of people that are going to watch this, I'm presuming, are inexperienced. But if you're inexperienced and you're spraying this stuff, it is so easy to get runs compared to a 2K. A 2K clear coat seems to be much easier to spray. So, you know, if you can get away and spray your 1K clear coat and get a really good finish, then hats off to you at first pop at it, because as I say, it isn't particularly, or I don't find it particularly easy to do, but it was, I wanted to get a super glassy finish, just to show people that you can get such a good finish with a 1K clear coat, forgetting all the other downfalls of it and the other negatives of it. It can be done without having to polish it and all that, if you don't want to, or don't need to. So that's the last coat of clear. So we had 3 full coats of clear. This gun is a reasonably fast gun for a mini gun. You know, very good gun. So it was more the thinness of the material, and as I say, that's where the experience comes in, of being able to lay as much material as you can to get it as smooth as you can without actually getting runs. But this is the final finish. No polishing has been done to this. It hasn't been touched. This was, let me look at my notes, this was 1 day after. And then what we'll do is we'll show you another clip, and this is with the other tank that I was saying about earlier, and that tank was done in a 2K clear the day after this one was. So when you see the next 2 tanks together, this would be 2 weeks after. So this is 1 day after, and you can see it's got a superb gloss. I mean, for a 1K clear coat, I was well happy with this. I don't think anybody would be able to tell a difference between a 1K and a 2K as far as, you know, gloss level goes. As I say, forgetting everything else. So now we'll see the 2 tanks together. This tank was done again in a Upol clear coat, a 20, what is it? 2080. Yeah, 2080 2K clear coat with a fast hardener. And this tank is obviously the one we've been doing in the 1K clear coat. So you can see after 2 weeks, the gloss level, if anything, the gloss level of the 1K is actually now superior to the 2K. But it certainly hasn't lost anything. as far as you can see, or much at all. So I'm trying to debunk this theory that a 1K won't, you know, hold its gloss for as long, because I've used 1Ks in the past, years and years ago, and some of them have been on cars, like for part repairs, etc. And these things have been out in Spain in the Spanish sunshine for like 5-6 years, and the stuff, again, this Upol clear coat has held up reasonably well. I'm not for 1 minute, as I say, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that it's better than a 2K or as anywhere near as good as a 2K, but I'm just explaining the reasons that you can get a reasonable finish with this stuff. So it's not not away with the fairies. So we've left it for 2 weeks, and now we're going to try and do the thing that can happen when you're filling your bike up. I don't know, your mate talks to you and say, you know, look at that or whatever, and you just pull the filler out and you spill some fuel over your 1K coated tank. And what we see with this is that when you actually pour the fuel on, you can't see any real change. You can see the line of fuel, and it's really difficult to pick it up on camera. So what I do is I use a small piece of blue rag, you know, tissue, just to see whether it's actually gone tacky or not. And you'll see by the small blue little fingerprints, I suppose you could call it, that's left, that it has actually started to go tacky again. So if you've done a tank in 1K clear coat, what I would say to you is, if you spill fuel on it, don't touch it, just leave it, let the fuel evaporate, and it should go back to more or less what it is. But you can see when we start, we've given it some time to penetrate, and now I go round just tapping the areas to see whether it's actually affected it much. And the areas at the side, and I guess that's because there's more of a runoff for the fuel, didn't seem to be too bad at all. But the area at the top, which you'll see in a minute, was quite tacky. This bit here, you can see the little bits of tissue being left where it's sticking. So that is the biggest downfall of the using 1K clear coat on a fuel tank. But sorry, I would say if you're going to do side panels and things like that, it would actually, it's not too bad at all. You can get a good finish with it. It's quite durable, and you don't have to worry too much about the safety aspect. I tried the heat lamp because in theory it should evaporate the petrol. Probably not as dangerous as it sounds, because you need a physical flame to light fuel up. But you know, I wouldn't recommend this at home, but I do, you know, I've worked with this stuff for years. So and I just evaporate the fuel just to see what it's like afterwards, and the actual finish is fine. It hasn't affected the finish at all. It's only where I've been sticking my finger in it. So as I say, if you've done this and you spill some fuel at a filling station or whatever, then don't touch it, just leave it, let it evaporate, and hopefully it wouldn't have done too much damage to your nicely prepared fuel tank. So what we'll see in a minute towards the end, and you can see now it's not tacky at all because it's physically dried, and the finish looks good. So this is the same tank. This is 10 weeks later, just so that you can see the amount of gloss retention after 10 weeks compared to the 2K. And you know, I don't think I'm seeing things, but I think it's actually got a better gloss retention than the 2K. Bear in mind, this is exactly how they came off the gun, both of them. None of them's been polished, none of them's been touched in any way, apart from a duster, because obviously if they've been lying around for 9 weeks, they get a bit dusty. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.